Non-binary friends, to everyone on the spectrum and in between, welcome to the 50th episode of The Shutter Show. I'm Ken Stacknick, and with me, as always, is my co-host,
David Marlowe.
David, how are you doing today?
It feels so surreal, Ken. 50 episodes.
50 episodes.
50 episodes, man. This I know a couple of friends who start their own podcasts, and they're not bad podcasts. They're really, really solid. But I think half the challenge is really just sticking with that schedule and just trying to get episodes out consistently. And damn it, if we didn't fucking pull that shit off.
Well, consistently is a strong term. Semi-consistently.
Semi-consistently. We were at least able to, especially in the beginning, like the first 25, able to rock like one a week. Like, I think that's pretty. To be fair, though, it was the pandemic, and it's not like we had nothing else to do. We didn't have a whole lot else to do. So, but even now that we have more to do, I think the fact that we've kept it up pretty well, I think says a lot about our work potential. So,
yeah, I'm very happy.
So, yeah, everyone, please give us money. That would be great. Thank you so much. Love you all. But yeah, Ken, how about yourself? How are you feeling with 50 episodes?
Oh, I'm very happy. I'm excited that in 2 more episodes, we are going to have one for every day of the year or every week of the year. So for people who will be just joining the show, they'll have a nice long back catalog to reference, which is the big thing that I'm excited about with our new viewers, our listeners, I should say, is that they are going to, if you really like the show, you're going to be able to immediately jump in and binge a bunch of it if that's what you want to do, which is one of the things that's just one of the things that I like to do. When I find a new podcast that I like, I tend to play it a bunch. And now that we will have the ability to offer that to people, I'm excited to be able to share this with share more movies, and hopefully they'll share us with their friends as well.
Yeah, I'm super stoked, and because this is episode 50, and because I am moving literally this coming Sunday cross country. Like, I think, Ken, you and I have pretty much decided, like, this is the cut point for season 2.
Season 3.
Oh, are we on season 3?
Yes, we are.
Goddamn. Oh, yeah. Great. Then this is the sort of the end point for season 3. And then we can pick up season 4 in a couple of weeks because you're going to your sister's wedding. You're going to be coming back here to the mainland to attend a loved one's wedding. And I'm going to be moving to a new state closer to familiar loved ones. And yeah, so we just need a little bit of time to get shit together. But no, we've got a lot of, there's so many possibilities right now for films that we want to discuss. There's one I know, for example, I'm desperate to do a double feature of the found footage insane asylum flicks, Grave Encounters and Gonjiam Haunted Asylum, its Korean counterpart. And I know, Ken, you've got a whole bunch of films that you're really wanting to discuss coming up.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Psycho Gorman is one I definitely want to talk about. The Invitation, both of the Morrissey films. Was it Flesh for Frankenstein and Blood for Dracula? There's both the Nosferatus are up there. Also the sequel to the Herzog Nosferatu, which I didn't know existed, and I guess I need to see because it's got Klaus Kinski in it, and I love me some crazy ass Klaus Kinski. There was Blood on Satan's Claw, Witchfinder General. There's a whole bunch of good stuff currently on Shudder that we will see if it's around, what's around when we come back for season 3. But for this episode, we are going to be talking about one hell of a film, pun intended. We're talking about Hellraiser, the 1987 film from Clive Barker. And I will say this right now. David is going to be taking a little bit more of a steering wheel with this particular episode because David loves himself some Hellraiser. I believe he's seen all the Hellraisers. I know he enjoys these movies. And so I guess my first question for you, David, is who hurt you?
Here's the thing. Enjoy is stretching it a bit with the sequels. I think
Okay.
because here's the thing. I think more accurately, I am a massive Clive Barker fan. As someone who has not only gotten to meet Clive Barker and actually like talk to him a little bit,
Mhm.
but also, God, what was it? I think it was at the Music Box Massacre. One of the films that they were showing was one based off of his one of his short stories. He didn't direct it, but he certainly produced and wrote the screenplay adaptation for it, which was Midnight Meat Train with Bradley Cooper, and
Mhm.
that film is fascinating. For one thing, I actually really enjoy it. I think it's a bit slow in certain places, but I it feels very Clive Barker.
Is it the one with Vinnie Jones in it?
Yes, it is from Snatch.
Yeah.
Yep, yeah.
And Survive Style 5, the better film.
Yep. But yeah, no, where Vinnie Jones plays the killer. That one is fantastic. Yeah, I that was playing at the Music Box Massacre one October, and he was there to kind of help promote the film and take questions about it. I got to ask him a couple of questions, but he autographed my copy of A Hellbound Heart, which is the novella that Hellraiser is adapted from. And he actually wrote A Hellbound Heart to eventually be adapted into a screenplay. Like he built this story, and I think that was it. Like you could get through it. I think the Audible, for example, is like 3 hours long. But I've read this book like multiple times, and it really, like, he ended up autographing a copy for me, and that copy got stolen while I was going off to go grab something. And so I was visibly upset about it. I was so depressed about it because it was the one thing I was really hoping I could get from that night was an autographed copy of The Hellbound Heart from Clive Barker. And so to cheer me up, Scott, my friend Scott, who you've met, he was at the wedding, super long hair. I can't remember if he sat at your table. I think he did. He was there with Kurt.
It sounds like somebody I met at your wedding.
Yeah. Super sweet fella. He went out and he got another copy and he brought it to Clive Barker. And Clive Barker's response was like, wait, they stole it? So they didn't pay money for it. And he's just like, no. He's like, oh, fuck that. And he does a full original doodle in the
Oh,
cover of
wow.
the book. So I have, and Clive Barker, like, he's just like this dude, he is one of the most artistically talented individuals
He's a famous
in the
doodler.
industry. Well, no, like he's just like his parents were paint, like he grew up in, God, where was it that he grew up? Oh gosh, where the fuck was it?
England, right?
No. Yeah, he grew up in England. He was born in Liverpool and he studied in Liverpool. And one of his parents was a painter, and the other one had a little bit more of an obscure job that didn't have anything to do with the arts, which I imagine was how the bills got paid. But his paintings, and I even put up an example of one in our stories for this, like one of my favorite ones, that it is my lifelong goal to eventually own a Clive Barker original painting that I can hang on my fucking wall and just look at that literally every single day and be happy. Even though his paintings are some of the most gruesome, macabre paintings that you will ever see. But damn it, if he just isn't just unbelievably talented, both as a painter, as a writer, as a filmmaker, as a playwright. The dude he was also he started his own theater company, called his own theater troupe called the Dog Company, and had approximately like 7 self-written plays that he put up, which is also where Doug Bradley came from. Doug Bradley was a member of the Dog Company and was in one of his more popular plays where he plays the devil. So it was just a match made in heaven. And so, yeah, so on this book, I have just this original Clive Barker doodle, and now it's tattooed on my back because I told myself if I ever lost that copy, I would be the saddest person in the world. And so just to prevent that sadness from happening, you know what? Let's just put it permanently on my back.
There we go.
Yeah. Yeah, Ken. So now, Ken, you're not nearly as familiar with this franchise in general. And I've seen most of them. I don't think I've seen all of them. I think I skipped one or two because one of them was literally a grab. Like they made it in 2 weeks on a budget of like 130,000 just to keep the rights. And it is hands down, like in the process of doing this, they insulted the shit out of Doug Bradley by offering him $5,000 to come back as Pinhead. To which is I'm like, I'm sorry, is that a serious offer? You know, it's fine. I'm only just the main guy that's on every single fucking poster. And you're gonna
Just
offer
the
me
action figure. Yeah.
You're gonna offer me $5,000, sir. Kindly go fuck yourself. So that one I refuse to see because that just seemed like a slap in the face to everyone. But yeah, so Ken, what is your experience with this franchise?
I have seen the first two Hellraisers, and that is my experience with the Hellraiser franchise. I am familiar with them from pop culture. I know more or less what there is to know about the Cenobites and kind of how they operate and how their puzzle box works. And I would say that I very much appreciate Hellraiser. But for me, well, all right. So I would say a majority of horror films fall into one of two general tones. And the first of that is like the spooky, fun, haunted house. And the other one is a goddamn nightmare. And very rarely do like a lot of movies try to be a nightmare and just come off as silly. This movie is truly nightmarish and is unfun to experience for the same reason that a nightmare is not as fun. Like this movie, this to like say something like Night of the Demons. Night of the Demons is a full-on like haunted house that you go, you know, at the Queen Mary or the State Fair, and like everybody's really into it and they're really giving it their all, and like money was spent, and like it's a solid, fun experience. And then there's those haunted houses where you have to like sign a waiver, where they're like going to abuse you and like push you kind of your breaking point. And
I've seen little videos of those haunted houses too. Those are fucking intense.
And this is much more akin to that. Like this movie's not fun to watch unless like you're really into the effects. If you're really into the prosthetics, you're really into the makeup work. I can see you being able to shut off your brain to everything else that's going on here. But like just simple stuff like everybody in this movie is basically miserable. Or just like not fun to be around. Like Frank is just all rapey and evil, and then like the wife is cheating on her husband, and like he's just trying his best, and you just feel bad for him, and the daughter is stuck in the middle.
Poor Andrew Robinson.
Yeah, and everything is like, and not everything is not just dirty, but like dirty with like worms and roaches. Everything is gross. Like it's icky. It's not pleasant to like. I will say this: like you are right when you were saying Clive Barker is like an artist, and I can see he comes from a family of painters, and I can see that he comes from an image making background because the imagery in the Hellraiser movie, and to a certain extent, at least in Hellraiser 2, like the imagery is very like it's very appealing, even when it's absolutely grotesque. You find yourself being like, Jesus, I've just never seen that before. And the design of each of the Cenobites is very interesting. And even though they very easily could be very samey, you could just be like, yeah, and another guy, and he's got hooks over here. All right, and this guy's got hooks over there. But each one of them has their own truly specific carnal nightmare thing. They've like, and it's not even like they've all got shtick, like, but they've all got like they're all characters, which is very impressive because a lot of times you tend to get like your big bad guy, and then you get a lot of like guys around them. and that's kind of the, it's the guy in charge who talks kind of normal but usually in a deep voice, and then yeah guy, and that's kind of it. We're like,
yeah,
yeah,
that's kind of what you get with the sequels, and we'll definitely talk about the sequels a little bit, like throughout this episode.
The doctor demon thing at the end of 2 is a real, like, I'm sure that looked great in your head, man, but like this execution of that is silly. Where like in the first Hellraiser, I can completely tell that he either wrote it being like, this is going to be a movie, or wrote it and was like, oh, this is a movie, because like it's so contained. It has like a lot of special effects in it, but there are a lot of the same kind of effects. So when you get the right people, they're able to knock each one of them out of the park. And there's not so many of them that they start lacking. Where like in 2, they just had too many special effect shots. And you can see where there are certain places where, hey man, we have 80 shots, but we only have the budget for 60. So that means every single, shot takes like a 5% cut to it, because you have to make that up somewhere. It's time, time is finite. And where Clive Barker, man, like there's a couple of shots that look like 1987, like the lightning coming off of the box.
Yeah, there is always that 1980s lightning that has a very specific look to it.
Well, it's hand animated and rotoscoped in. Like it's actually very, like it's a very painstaking process to do. But all of the other effects, I think, look great. And I was very surprised when I was looking back at some of the reviews from when it came out. And some of the people were kind of like, no, this is just, this isn't great stuff. And at least to my eyes, especially my modern eyes, like, man, the prosthetic work in this is really solid. I would say, some of the flesh effects don't entirely work because, you're ripping chunks of flesh off of a person, but, they have to actually have their skin underneath. So things get built up a little much, and there's no way to take those things down without CGI. But why I would say I have a complicated relationship with this movie in my personal enjoyment of it, because this is just not, this is like, much like Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, this is not the kind of movie I tend to put on. This is the kind of movie that I would be very careful who you shared this with, because this is just not going to be a lot of people's kind of movie.
Yeah, it's a very know your audience kind of thing.
Well, it's going to be way too rough for some audiences, and some of the imagery is just going to wreck certain people. It's just like some people cannot handle spicy food, and this is intensely spicy. This is if nothing else, an acquired taste. At least for me, if your idea of a horror movie is mostly jump scares, then this movie's playing on a whole different level.
God, and I'm looking at this too. It looks like there's an 11th film coming out in production.
Oh yeah, with the Lady Pinhead.
Yeah, Lady Pinhead, which originally Clive Barker intended for Pinhead to be a woman, but there was already, what's her name? She has the hole in her throat. She's got that rod going through her mouth. Because I know there's Butterball and there's Chatter. The other two are the other Cenobites, but I'm trying to remember what the woman's name is. But yeah, it's, and there's an insanely large amount of different Cenobites throughout all the whole franchise. Some of them,
according to this, she's called female Cenobite.
Oh, that's nice.
Yep.
God damn it. For fuck's sake. But no, this is, I find this fascinating because, kind of what you're saying, like, you got to know your audience when you're suggesting this film to people.
This movie will ruin someone's evening if they're not expecting it. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
don't surprise them with the plot for this. Just let them know what they're in for.
Yeah, don't sit down with a big plate of like spaghetti, and then watch this movie, because like you're just gonna be unappetized after a certain point.
Yeah,
because this movie is wet. Like
Yeah. But
in,
what
in
what what
yeah,
I find to be the most impressive thing is this is Clive Barker's first ever film that he directed. Like
yeah.
he went into this literally knowing absolutely nothing about filmmaking in the slightest. And he even recalled, like in an interview, he talks about how he's like, well, I should at least do some research into some of the techniques. He's like, so as I went to the library and I tried finding some books on filmmaking, and the only two books that library had were sold out. So I'm like, great, I'm about to start this this $1 million project, and I don't even have two fucking books. And he's just like, but luckily the dude had an unbelievably competent crew of professionals, and this is one of those rare occasions where the studio is actually excited about a film like this. Because yeah, sure, like horror sells really well, and plenty of studios will get behind horror films, but it tends to go into a weird area when that violence is sexual. And so I find it very surprising that the studio was behind, which I'm trying to remember which studio did
David,
the original one.
I can tell you exactly what they were thinking. I think they were thinking, we've got the next Stephen King on our hands. And let's be clear, one of the Stephen King novels has like a sewer orgy in it halfway through with a bunch of underage kids. So I have a feeling the studio was like, some sexual stuff, it's okay. I mean, it was also the 80s and everyone was on cocaine.
It also helps that Stephen King gave Clive Barker literally the greatest quote that he'll ever have, and he can market himself for the rest of his life on this quote, is Stephen King saying, I have seen the future of horror, and his name is Clive Barker.
Yeah. And that's why I think the studio in particular was also very likely to be like, okay, this is new and scary. Like, because if you're an executive and you're greenlighting this film, you're like, yikesy daisies, like, ooh, what did we do? This is very intense. But if what you're doing is topping Stephen King, then I could see them being very comfortable with it being, really pushing the limits of things, because you're trying to beat Stephen King. And the only way that, like, especially if you have people who are looking at this is like, how do you beat Stephen King? And the answer is obviously you write better stories.
Mm-hmm.
To a lot of people who don't understand how stories work, what they then greenlight is just like more of a movie. And I can see somebody looking at Clive Barker and being like, oh yeah, that's Stephen King, but like extra Stephen King. Yeah. That's like Stephen King on crack instead of cocaine.
Yeah. And this was, and once again, like, this is a project that he, like, The Hellbound Heart was started as novella, but he was writing this novella and knowing eventually that he wanted to adapt to the screen. So he wrote it within that 3-act parameter. But also at the same time, I think the reason why he ended up directing Hellraiser back in 1986 was in order to protect himself from just truly appalling adaptations. Because by that point, like, they'd made a couple of adaptations to some of his short stories, and they never conferred to him. They never went to ask, hey, what would you do in this particular area? Like, what were you seeing when you were making this? So like his short stories, like Rawhead Rex, including like the tales of like the Books of Blood, which was some of the first short lists, like books of short stories that he did. Like he quotes them as being reduced to mockery of a picture, all the way back in 1985. So then he decided to direct pictures to protect himself from bullshit like that. And so, like, it's the entire reason why he jumped into film to begin with. And then after his experience with the studio, and it's kind of a tale as old as time, then going in and making certain changes without asking him, them cutting certain things out that he didn't want to have cut out, them cutting his budget, but then also just the way that they carried on the franchise after that. Like it's definitely like him and Max Brooks, for example, could have a lot to talk about. And you know who Max Brooks is, right?
I've actually seen Max Brooks speak live.
Oh, awesome. Okay, then you know exactly who he is. So like Max Brooks, for example, is not a fan of the World War Z adaptation to film with Brad Pitt.
See, like, yeah, like I think like World War Z has a lot of good stuff in it. The problem is with it is that it's not World War Z.
Yeah, they could have called it anything else and it would have been fine. But I think the name is, they just used the name to get people to get butts and seats, and unfortunately,
like
those butts were not happy.
I'll fix World War Z right now. HBO, if you're listening, just greenlight a 10-episode series called World War Z. Each director of each episode is different. They have to share a couple of actors who are weaved in between. If it's your main episode, you get to do the casting. And then everybody gets like $1.5 million. And then everybody gets to do whatever they want in whatever style they want. They just have to tell that story from that chapter in the book. And each one is its own story with its own director. And that is World War Z. That is what you bought. So that is what you should make. It is just wild to me that they were like, let's take this really interesting anthology series and then like turn it into what if Brad Pitt fought zombies? And like, I like Brad Pitt fighting zombies, but just don't, but it's not World War Z. That's not why you sit down for World War Z. That's like going into a McDonald's and then ordering sushi. Like, that's just not what they do there, man. And I don't know why you're then disappointed when it's not. Don't do that. It's just, yeah. You are right. They would have a lot to talk about. I would say that if I'm Clive Barker, the number one thing that I'm worried about is just getting the tone right, because his stuff is just so not what was happening in the mid to late 80s when like he's like, or the early, like any of the 80s really. You know, most of that stuff is your Nightmare on Elm Streets, your Friday the 13th, you know, your Night of the Demons, you know, your Societies. Everything's kind of fun. Everything's kind of cheeky. I mean, God, Nightmare on Elm Street like just starts doing gags. I mean, Nightmare on Elm Street, cheek. I mean, it had a children's cartoon show, which is wild for an yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Yeah, okay. They're like, yeah, there was like there's like a Freddy Krueger cartoon. Yeah, it was wild.
Huh.
Yeah. I mean, just like the fact that the Beetlejuice got a cartoon too. Oh God, there's one more big one that was an R-rated movie. Was it Rambo? I think. Yeah, Rambo got a cartoon, which is real, like, you know, man, those movies are not for kids. I mean, you know,
I remember the Rambo cartoon. Like, I remember that one, and like it always aired like alongside G.I. Joe in the morning. Yeah, that was a weird decision for a cartoon to make.
I mean, they're following.
Sorry if you're hearing clacking, by the way, that's my dog walking around, and we decided to put a bell on her for some reason. So she's making. Oh, come here. Sorry.
Up.
There she is. Say hello to everybody.
See, a reason to check in, a reason to watch us on YouTube. You occasionally get to see David's dog. You'll get to see Freddy Potatoes one of these days when we're back together. But he's still with mom. So
yeah, look at her judging me right now. But no, like, and it's fascinating because, and I've seen a large portion of the sequels, and to give folks just an idea of like, there is a ridiculous number of sequels for this franchise.
Too many sequels.
Far too many fucking sequels. Yet, strangely enough, this is the one franchise that I could look at and be like, you know, if ever there were a franchise to get a reboot, this is the one to do it.
I mean, they did. It was called The Mummy.
That touche. But no, like I'm literally gonna list off the titles because some of these titles are lazy as fuck. You have the original Hellraiser, you have Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, you have Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth, you have Hellraiser Bloodline, Hellraiser Inferno, Hellraiser Hellseeker, Hellraiser, and this is the best title, Hellraiser Deader, as in Deader. It's dead, but just a little bit more dead. And I think that was actually the one where they had to do, they made it in like 2 weeks. They like, you have to pen a script, you have to cast everybody, and then you have to shoot it. All of this in a month.
Yeah.
You also you also have a budget of about $130,000 to $150,000. Good fucking luck.
You have a budget of $150.
Like, here, do this task we've set forward for you. Also, we're going to cripple you at the starting gate.
Also,
then,
David, do not forget Hellraiser starring Paul Reiser from Mad About You.
Fucking love it. But yeah, and then after Deader, there's Hellraiser Hellworld, and that one takes place. What was this film? This was like 2005, so Matrixy shit with computers and stuff.
Good.
And that one has Henry Cavill. I shit you folks not. Henry Cavill is one of the lead characters in that. There's another one that has Adam Scott in it as well. Some of the people I've seen pop. I know, good for him. And then after Hellworld, there was Hellraiser Revelations, and then the most recent one that they did was Hellraiser Judgment. And the past two films did not have Doug Bradley, and that's because they pretty much told Doug Bradley to go fuck himself by saying, we'll pay you $5,000 to play Pinhead again, which is like pennies on the dollar of what he makes per film. I cannot begin to imagine how insulting that must have been.
Well, question, like, what has he done other than be Pinhead?
That's a good idea. Well, because he started off in the Dog Company, the theater troupe so he does a lot of theater. I think he does more theater than he does films. And I think that the Hellraiser films just kind of keep the lights on and allows him to do the things that he wants to do. So Doug Bradley, which, by the way, I will say, Clive Barker hates the name Pinhead. Fucking hates it. Pinhead was never his name in the book. He was always the priest or the high hell priest. Like, I don't know, Pinhead as a character and just the Cenobites in general are fascinating because they're not supposed to be monsters. They are, and even Doug Bradley, he's like, when talking to Clive Barker, like, he's always like, the hell priest, he's an impartial judge. So he was created from like a World War I veteran named Elliot Richard Spencer, who struggled from PTSD and guilt from the loss of a friend, and that eventually led him to seek comfort through higher pleasures, aka the box. And so the term Cenobite, it's actually Latin for common life, which is like used to describe like a monastic lifestyle or a monastic lifestyle. So it's like the sequels completely miss the point of what Clive Barker is trying to do. And it's the idea of like creating this plot of like this, a whole plot of sadomasochistic tendencies. And it's like what happens when somebody has experienced all the pleasures of life, both disgusting and beautiful, and what happens when that person now loses purpose? They look for pleasure in the most insane places. And like the opening in the book, Hellbound Heart, like Frank has a full-on conversation with the Cenobites, especially with the priest, who's Pinhead. And the only reason he's called Pinhead was because that was just an easy way for the crew to know who the other person was talking about. So the crew actually named the monster Pinhead. And Clive Barker fucking hates it. He still to this day fucking hates Pinhead, to the point where he made a whole comic book series. And in that comic book series, Pinhead like kills anybody who refers to him as Pinhead. Like, he will make their life a living fucking hell if you even reflect. He might not have beef with you. You might not have been the one that summoned him, so he'll leave you alone. But for God's sake, you're like, oh, hey, there's Pinhead. He's like, oh, you're gonna die terribly.
So he's not an impartial judge. He's very partial.
Yeah, he's partial if you call him by the name he doesn't want to be called.
Yeah, which is pretty much like, don't worry, I'll be impartial the whole time unless you say this one word, and then I'm going to murder you.
Exactly. But like Doug Bradley always, like, he, like, in terms of like how he played him, like, it was very like, he's like yeah, no, like, because it took a lot of time before he finally, for a better term, pinned down just how subtle his character had to be. And when you look at his performance, there is not an ounce of emotion on him, but it's so well done. It's completely on purpose. And this is a dude who comes from the theater. So yeah, like your first instinct is to go big. But let's see, like other work that he's done, and I love that he's known for is literally just Hellraiser films. So let me dive a little deeper into this one. He's had 70 actor credits though. So like, he's done plenty. Oh, he's in the TV series on Hulu, Lore, which is based off an old podcast that I listen to a lot. Dead by Daylight. Oh, well, no, that's a video game and he plays a Cenobite. Okay, never mind. He was in Star Wars: The Old Republic, Shadow of Revan. Yeah, he's wrong turn 5, Bloodlines.
Yikes. I mean, I get how all right, no shade to this man, and he deserves more money. But I can also understand why, from a producing standpoint, they looked at his career and were willing to roll the dice on, so who needs who more? We don't technically need you to make a Hellraiser movie, but we think you need us for that Hellraiser money. So let's roll them dice and see how it goes.
Well,
I do not agree with this.
Like he's old as fuck now, so he doesn't like. He's got plenty of money and plenty of residuals at this point.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully he saved his money, but yeah, you still got to keep those coffers going.
Oh yeah, oh no, 100%. But I think there's a lot that was gained from this. Like for example, like me, Ken. Like I'm a huge fan of Silent Hill, and honestly, all the monsters, their designs were like a lot of influence was drawn from Hellraiser and the Cenobites and that whole world. Like that's where a lot of the Silent Hill monster creation comes from. Like Barker always considered his stories to be based off of Greek myths. And so his main characters were often playing the part of the explorer, like Odysseus in the Odyssey. And I think having listened to him in person talk and seen interviews with him talk about Hellraiser, he's definitely burnt out on it. He's which is why like I don't take the sequels that seriously, because they're like, I might take 3 seriously because 3 was also partially written by Clive Barker and as well as, God, who else? He was his co-writer. I'm trying to remember what his name is. Oh, anyway, but yeah, no, like he at least wrote the first 3 and had like a direct hands-on work ethic with the first 3 films. So you see a bit more of what he's going for there. But then after that, the rights get sold to like several different studios. I know, like, I think they're currently in the hands of Dimension Studios still. And I know they're intending to make an 11th film before they eventually turn it into a series. Like right now, for example, on Hulu, and I only just found this out, that they already did another adaptation of the Books of Blood. I didn't know that came out yet. I knew that they were working on it, but I had no idea. Because like that's a novel I've read a lot of his works, especially a lot of his short stories. And damn it, if his like the way his language is very, like, when you read like what he's talking about and the environment around you, you see it. Like you see what he's talking about, and it's very much his own style. It's very much his own way of expressing both himself as an openly gay man, but also like this was a gentleman who grew up in London. Oh God, like I'm trying, like, yes, he grew up. I'm trying to see if I can find the name, because there was a club that he used to frequent regularly. But yeah, like he was big into the S&M community. Like he was.
Yeah, I can see that.
Oh no, like this is all drawn from his sexual experiences and the sexual experiences of people that he was friends with. And I will say, like, England had a very crazy underground S&M, like BDSM subculture that was kind of hidden from public view. He really likes going on the theme of like sadomasochism. And it's the idea of like, for example, like just the overall plot of the first film, it's about a woman who had literally gotten fucked so goddamn well that she would literally murder people for this person so that he could gain his skin back after he got like banished to this weird dimension of hell.
I mean, not just anyone, like fuck, like the brother of her husband.
Yes, the brother of her husband, who pretty much, and in the book, like it's described as a rape, but it's one of those cases, one of those rare cases where because Julia is a sadomasochist, she's kind of into it. And like there is
the sex scene in here is that kind of real problematic. Is it rape? But
yeah,
not
but like in that world also, like in the S&M world, there's something called consensual non-consent, and it's just for people who kind of have that fantasy of being taken by force, and it's in this void of like of masochism, sadomasochist type of kink and energy, and he dives into a lot of areas that you wouldn't see a lot of mainstream cinema diving into. Like for example, like the film is called Hellraiser, but his novella is called A Hellbound Heart, because in and of itself it is a romance story, but it's all about toxic love, and it has nothing to do, because Frank has no love for Julia in this film. Frank is just using Julia to get his kicks off. Whereas Julia, like something awakened in her when she had her fling with Frank a week before her wedding, which by the way, like Clive Barker makes a point that like Frank takes her in her wedding dress, like wearing her wedding veil. And there is a definite, like there's definite symbolism there in what's happening. Like they eventually wanted to call it the film. They decided eventually to call it Hellraiser because they were throwing a whole bunch of different names at the board. Like Clive Barker suggested the title be like Sadomasochist from Beyond the Grave. That title was also discarded by the producers. So Barker drew suggestions from anyone on set.
Call it Pinhead.
Like not even that for like Pinhead, but just like what should we call this fucking movie? Because the studio doesn't want to call it the same name that they're basing it off of, like off of my book that they're basing this off of. So like, what do we call it? Which prompted a 60-year-old female assistant to offer a wildly obscene alternative, which was Hellraiser, and it just stuck. Yeah, like there were a lot of things that just sort of didn't end up being, like, for example, Barker originally pegged like the English experimental rock group Coil to score Hellraiser, and you can actually find there is the studio claimed their music was the only kind that could actually like make his bowels churn. Wow, but in a cost-cutting measure, the studio nixed the Coil score in favor of a cheaper house band arrangement, which is fine. It's great. Like it's a great score.
It's a solid score for sure.
But you can find it. It's called the unused, like their album is called The Unused Score of Hellraiser. You can find it on iTunes. It is fascinating. I know Barker found inspiration for the visual aesthetic of Hellraiser from sources like the gritty S&M environments that he grew up around. You know, he drew on punk subculture, Roman Catholicism, which he constantly pokes fun at because he's like, no, this isn't heaven versus hell shit. This is hell in a different dimension. Like the Cenobites are travelers trying to explore different senses and pleasures and all those, but they've really marked themselves on torture. And so, but they're able to leap between dimensions. And so if they get summoned, like, cool, they're like, all right, this person wants to have fun. Maybe they can be a Cenobite one day. And they'll show up, but like, they'll show up for the person that summoned them, which is why in the second film, the girl uses the box and they come and they're like, and Pinhead's like, stop. No. Like, she's got the box. Someone told her to use the box. So we're going to go for that person. And
which one of you paged me?
Exactly. It's like, I know someone's ghosting me right now and I don't fucking like this.
Someone keeps ringing my doorbell and running away, and I will not stand for it anymore. I have such pleasures to show them.
Yeah, but yeah, it's all based on like on the S&M club scene in both Holland and New York City, which was fucking insane in the late 80s. Late 80s, early 90s, that shit was fucking insane. Like Pinhead Design, Barker drew on like African fetish art. So like he was using African fetish art, masks, sculptures. Like I think his original sketch, which is it was an original painting of his for the character, included like navel piercings, like to suggest like genital mutilation. Sketches were turned into like a mask licensed by like Composite Effects. And that like included the 30th anniversary celebration of the movie in like 2017, which one of the reasons why that monster at the end, that one that you see like scrounging through that hallway that looks super cheap. In the original cut, it was much darker. It was harder to make out how cheap that monster looked. But because of all the composites and eventually now where it is, you can see it clear as day and it doesn't look as effective. So yeah, I could go on for fucking days about how fascinating just Clive Barker is in general. Also, if you were to listen to an interview with him, the dude smokes like fucking 5 packs a day. And you can really, really tell by his hand.
I mean, almost everybody in this movie talks like they smoke 5 packs a day. Like
they probably did.
Yeah, no, the scene where Frank first comes back and he's just like, Julia, don't look at me.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that mistakes weren't made, but don't look. Okay, I might have gone to a hell dimension and I'm going to need you to bring back some boys. I need blood. Don't look at me. I
might have taken this too far.
I'm very wet. Yeah, and my God.
Oh, it is such a wet film. Oh my God.
In the second movie, when then she's all just walking around all skinless and he's kind of into it, and then he turns into her, and then we get more weird mummy imagery when he like wraps up his mummy lady, and then he's kind of into it, even though like she's all squishy. Like, it's such a wet movie. Like,
but you gotta love how he put her in a what. So many versions of clothes ruined when they just put the clothes on a little too soon.
When she
of all the suits he gives her a fully white suit to cover her bloody body.
Yeah.
Why?
The full-on Ice Cream Man suit, and she's just like, oops.
Yeah, it looks cool. Don't get me wrong, it looks fucking badass. But like from a practical standpoint, why would you make that decision?
I'm gonna need some white wine to get this out. It's going to set here at any moment.
Oh my God. But no, what's crazy also too is just like, oh my God, the makeup effects are amazing. The monster effects, the gore effects, they are all incredible. Just that stop motion sequence where Frank comes back to life, and you see his arms just pop up out of the floor and his body just slowly starts to materialize.
Is that stop motion? I thought a lot of that was like rod and puppet stuff.
Some of it, like, it was a mix of both. So some of it was like stop motion. It was a mix of
a bunch of it's reverse motion stuff. There's a lot of pumping blood out of the floor, and then look, it gets sucked into the floor, and that kind of old school trickery. But yeah, no, I mean, it's clear. I just didn't realize there was stop motion in there too. I didn't recognize that.
Yeah, it's but then also like what's also funny too is when this film first was released, the promotional push for it was really fucking weird. So like the producers organized a really, I suppose unique's the best word to use, like a very unique marketing ploy. So they did a home shopping network program offering Hellraiser fans the chance to purchase merchandise from the film. Items included a Lament configuration tissue box, a Hellraiser thermos, a coffee mug, and many other, like there was a tea cozy that was Hellraiser themed.
How very, like, I mean, I can see how this movie is a nightmare to market.
Yeah. The program was hosted by a chipper old lady who claimed to be a huge fan of the film. The program was also included in the rare first edition VHS release of the movie. So if you find that, please, for the love of God, fucking tell me, because I want to see it.
Yeah, like upload that shit to YouTube. That needs to be seen.
Oh my God. I tried looking for it. I couldn't find it on YouTube, but if anyone has access to that first edition VHS copy, please post it on YouTube because the world needs to see it. But then you just think all this for these insane creature effects. I think like Pinhead's makeup took like 6 hours to do. Like it was all the Cenobites had real complex makeup effects that were going on.
Yeah.
And I
As an
think
understatement.
the original lead Cenobite was going to be Butterball, the big guy, the big one who keeps like sort of fingering his open stomach wound.
Yep. Good gross stuff.
But he couldn't talk through his prosthetics. And so the opening where the Cenobites come up after like tearing Frank to pieces, the hands that you see put Frank's face back together, that's Butterball. Like that's Butterball's hands. But they're supposed to. Yeah, good for him. Apparently one of the nicest guys. Like on set, like some people would just like the Cenobites, the actors playing them would be so miserable with the whole makeup effects. But he'd come in the morning like, "Hey guys, how you doing all day? It's such a nice day outside." And everyone's just like, "Oh God, fuck you, Butterball."
Just fingering my belly, having a good time.
Just fingering my belly. Isn't it a good day to be alive, torturing folks?
Give myself a little tickle.
Yeah. Also, apparently, the soundstage was not of the best sound canceling quality, and because it's the United Kingdom, there's a lot of ducks and geese around, and so they were constantly having to send out PAs to shush the ducks, and eventually had led to them eventually killing a small percentage of them, for which then also on one of the days that they had to kill a bunch of geese and ducks, they ran out of stage blood. Yeah,
I don't like where this is going. Oh no.
Yeah, so you know where Larry cuts himself?
Yeah.
And the blood drips onto the floor. Duck blood, baby.
Well,
yeah.
Gross.
But then, of course, like the whole first shot of like them putting Frank's face back together on the floor, they were using real meat for that, and they had to reshoot it because the studio's like, "Oh, that might upset some people." So yeah, it's such a fucking fascinating series. The sequels, I wouldn't recommend the sequels to anybody outside of Hellbound, which is the second one and maybe the third one. But outside of that, like if you're looking for material in this franchise, there's Tapping the Vein, which is a short story that Clive Barker wrote that's related to this. The Books of Blood, which are in print and on Hulu. But yeah, and then of course, like he did all the Hellraiser comics, which I would say are better than any of the sequels. The Hellraiser comics are absolutely amazing, and I highly recommend people check them out. But I don't know, like Ken, I'm curious to kind of get a few more. I'm curious to get some more thoughts from you in terms of just parts of the film that really stuck with you and things that you enjoyed about the film itself.
I actually am really impressed by the directing itself. Very kind of taken aback to hear that Clive Barker was like going to the library and looking for books, because he has such a confident hand in his imagery and his composition and the way he moves his camera. He's not wasting shots here and there. He's not, the cutting is such that it's clear that there's intent with what he was shooting, and that this isn't like piecemealed together from a bunch of spare random parts because he didn't know what he was doing. I would say absolutely the production and art design is top level, and in particular, visually speaking, he goes down as one of those guys like H.R. Giger, as just like, or Guillermo del Toro, somebody who just has a different, distinct vision that is also rough around the edges and grotesquely beautiful, and
all with their own art books, by the way.
Yeah, and all like that it's something more akin to like the black paintings by Francis Goya or Francis Bacon or Bacon. I think they're both Francis actually. But yeah, it's the other thing I think is really great here is a lot of the performances, because none of these characters are likable except for maybe the husband, who you just kind of feel.
Kirsty's kind of likable.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, all right, she's definitely likable. But you you understand these characters, like Julia in particular is a real not great person in this.
No,
And
no.
it would be
This
very
this is
easy to
somebody
just,
who
yeah,
kind of like she's supremely unhappy with Larry and
yeah.
super attracted to Larry's brother. So the
And
physical attributes of Larry that she found attractive is also in Frank, but Frank is just kind of the bad boy.
well, but like, and she, it would be very easy to just straight hate her character, but you kind of get where she's coming from. I don't think you agree with what she's doing is good,
Oh
but
God,
you
no.
were
Yeah.
like, oh, I see how that, I see how this happened. And that is, and that is one of those, challenges for actors when you have characters who are not, who are not saving puppies, who are not, charming, and are, and the whole movie they are just being conflicted or damaged or being forced to do things, or not forced, but are doing things that are not great. It's very hard to make those characters understandable. And even Frank in this, man, I mean, I've never known a dude who went as far as traveling the dimensions and raising a demon to experience the outer edges of pleasure and pain. But I've definitely known some real pieces of shit like that. I understand how they exist, and he played it right. Like I know guys like that, and yeah, overall, like solid movie that I could recommend to some. But it earns its reputation. It is truly a nightmarish film. It will give you nightmares. It feels like watching a nightmare. And if you don't like nightmares, then I would say approach this one with a little bit of trepidation, a little bit of caution.
Yeah. And I think one of my favorite parts in this film has to be like the first appearance of the Cenobites to Kirsty when she's in the hospital. Just that whole segment of when she's playing with a box, and then you have the bell tone that comes in just as like, oh, and what was it, like the way that the set's designed in that one sequence where you bring the lights down, but then there's a light shining behind the tile, but the grout in the tile is completely
Disappears. Yeah.
luminescent. Yeah, it completely disappears and you just see the light coming through the tile. But then it also does this whole thing of like where they're like shooting, like things just start randomly bleeding, just like the gurney or the medical gurney, like the fluids that are hanging on there. You just see
Yeah. The IV
blood
bag.
just starting. Yeah, the IV bag. You just see like blood start shooting into the IV bag. It's little bits of production design like that that really allow this film to hit hard. Like this film fucks in the most disgusting way. It's definitely one of the more toxic love stories you will ever see.
Can confirm.
Yeah. But no, like, and I would say for folks who want a taste of what's of horror royalty, to give this one a look, because yeah, like you go on there's some video games, like there's some fight games out there where you're playing as all of the hit monsters of Hollywood, and you've got Jason, you've got Freddy, but then along in there fighting Leatherface is Pinhead. So like he's definitely part of the horror icon royalty, and I think folks would be doing themselves a disservice by not at least checking out the original where it all came from. I would happily say avoid any other sequels past two. It's not worth it. It coming from somebody who loves Clive Barker and knows that Clive Barker does not like the sequels, you're not going to get a real Hellraiser movie from those. They are hilariously bad sometimes. And if you want to see Henry Cavill being this weird little fucking hacker who opens the box online, then sure, fine, check that out. It is funny a little bit.
See, I don't know who needs to hear this out there in our audience, but for God's sakes, if you find an ancient puzzle box and you're messing around with it, and A, the weather or lighting changes around you, B, the box mysteriously moves, or C, you start to hear voices that very distinctly could be demons, put the box down and go anywhere else. If you can, perhaps throw the box into a volcano or into the mouth of an F5 tornado. Something like chuck it into the Marianas Trench, but do not be like, ooh, look, I figured out the puzzle box, because it's going to end badly for you.
Cenobites show up to an inquisitive fucking octopus who just happened to get its little tentacles on the box.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
We have such things to show you, cephalopod. Yeah, exactly. Well, David, I would say, is that a sode? Did we just make it? Did we just do our 50th episode?
I think we just did our 50th episode, buddy. Man.
All right. Woo! We did it.
God damn.
Well,
I'm
David,
impressed. I'm impressed.
Good for us.
It's rare that I stick with anything this long.
Yeah, exactly. Well, don't tell your wife that.
Well, no. This podcast and my wife are the two exceptions.
David, where can the good people on the internet find you and find us?
The good people can find us at Shutter_show, where I will be posting our polls, but we won't be doing that for a little while. I might be posting some things on our stories just to keep folks, engaged. But once we come back, we'll start making announcements about what our next film is going to be. You can find me at _DW Marlowe, where I get up from my regular musings, occasional woodworking projects, and just see what I am up to in my everyday life. I used to do a little bit of the Twitter stuff on our Shutter Show page on Twitter, but that seems to be gone now. It's no longer around. I think Twitter I just wasn't using it for a couple of weeks, and Twitter's like, oh, this guy's not using it anymore. We can delete that. I know. It's all right. I wasn't using it much anyway. So, but Ken, you're on Twitter.
I am on Twitter.
Where can folks find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Ken Stacknick, and also on Instagram at Ken Stacknick. You can find us on Twitter at Shutter Show. You can email us at shuttershow@gmail.com. You can find us on YouTube by searching for Shutter Show Podcast, because we don't have enough subscribers as of yet to get that custom URL, but we are getting there. And let's see here. Other than that, I think the most important thing to say to everybody is good night, good luck, and most importantly, go fuck yourselves.
Go fuck yourselves.
Also get vaccinated and boosted and all that good stuff, please.
Yes, please. Just do the bare minimum. We're begging you, please. We want to hang out in bars again.
We love you. Goodbye.